And so finally, we have our templates. Now, this is where it goes wrong. Please do not think that these patterns are sent to me by angels up in the tailoring heaven, and these are very special, and if you don't have them, you can't make nice things. These are purely created out of necessity. So for example, here we have a front edge pattern. Depending on what you make, this could be anything, literally anything. It's just that I use this pattern so often, this shape so often, that I need to have a pattern just to keep them consistent. Armhole shape, and this is like an inverted version of the armhole shape. I have an undercolor pattern. You can recognize this shape by the Fairgate rulers. I once copied this as an apprentice. I just want to show you that you can use cardboard templates and patterns, and the nice thing about them is, again, you can make them yourself. Lapel shapes, again, this could be literally anything: square lapel, DB lapel, small lapel, big lapel, belly, no belly, straight, curved, whatever. Dart shapes, sometimes you want to use the same dart exactly in the same place, just to keep things consistent. So this is, for example, a pattern that I use if I'm reinforcing the self undercolor with some fusing, and I only use that if I'm making a self undercolor which is made from a very thin fabric, and because the color gets a lot of wear and tear, it needs some stability, so therefore I use that. Nothing special about it. In this box I have a couple of patterns for sleeve heads, for pocket bags, pocket sizes, etc. Now at some point I will make a video on how to make a let's say a template for your pockets and your pocket bags and your jettings, because the nice thing about patterns is that, first of all, they allow you to be consistent with your lines. So for example, if you're marking something and you need to do symmetrical work, you can flip this over and use exactly the same shape on the other side. Also, what patterns do, and why I like them, is that you update them, and as you go through your journey, you can compare your, let's say, first lapel pattern with the last one, and you can see what changes you've made and how you have changed and how you have developed yourself and how you have improved. Also, another thing which is great about patterns is they allow you to be extremely economical with your fabric. So suppose you're laying your fabric out, your fit up, and you want to cut your jettings, your flaps, fabric for yourself on the collar, for your pocket bags, for this and that. If you work out exactly how much is needed, including the seam allowances and including the inlays and the room and the area that you allow for error, then you can go to the absolute minimum and therefore don't use more than you need. And so you don't end up with excessive expenses, especially when you're an apprentice or when you don't have a lot of fabric on your hand. Also, another great thing is that when you're cutting your fit up, and for example, you're working for a company and it's not your own fabric, you can very quickly lay all the patterns on top of the fit up, and you can immediately see if you have enough or not. And if you are kind of like tight with fit up, you can move things over and really do some complex kind of like puzzling around, which you normally wouldn't do if you're just trying to mark things. But you can really place things extremely efficiently, edge to edge, turn things over and go from there. So these are the tools and templates that you're going to be using as well. And what I would say is that maybe in the beginning you don't need them as much, but as you become more professional and more consistency is desired, then they will become inevitable. Now, another note that I want to mention about patterns is that when you sometimes work in a workshop, let's say an undercolor pattern is given to you and you're just going to use it, and because you're shown how to use it and what to do. Be extremely careful with that. What you want to do is to understand in and out, forwards and backwards, exactly what the principle is behind that pattern, how it's made, how it's used, and how you can change it for every different design that you're going to be working on. If you're just going to use a pattern and you get used to it, trust me, there will be a moment that you will mess things up. And when things are messed up, you need to backtrack the cause of your work. And if you have been given a pattern and you just assume that it's perfect, you will never think of that pattern to be wrong and the cause of your problem. And so you end up hitting your head against walls, sleeve boards, hams. You get suicidal and you still cannot solve the problem. So please, before you just assume a pattern is right, study it thoroughly until you know exactly what to do with it and how to make it yourself. It's always better to be self-sufficient than to rely on someone else's logic, because logic is always based on perception. So that's that, and now we're just going to move on to the materials that we're going to need. Now keep in mind that these are cardboard patterns, and just like wooden rulers, they're not always reliable. And I'm saying this in the sense that, well, it's cardboard. You can bend it, break it, and as you kind of like slide along the edge with a pencil or a piece of chalk, you're not going to have the smoothest edges after a while. So this is what I would suggest. You can either trace them out on a piece of, let's say, hard plastic like PVC, but then even that is not as reliable because, you know, you never know whether you cut a perfect curve. Or if you have a bigger budget, what you can do is digitalize your patterns and get them laser cut on aluminium or a slightly thicker plexiglass. That way you can ensure that you have sharp lines all the time.